through a leg across that iron horse and pull the throttle down. A million things rushing through his mind like that rumbling sound. Living life in his own eyes, direction isn't clear. So searching all these years.
Welcome to Answers from Mars Hill. This is Pastor Ski, New York State Elder for Bikers for Christ Motorcycle Ministry, and the senior and founding pastor of the Rushing Wind Biker Church in Holbrook, New York. And I want to welcome you to the second episode of the show. Last week I discussed some of my background, what brought me to this place in faith and ministry, and why this show has been on my heart for a long time, to have this kind of conversation where I can explain this faith called Christianity to people who are out there that are not of faith. It's what I do mostly in ministry, and I find that so many people, they just have misinformation, and I'm here to answer questions. That's pretty much what I'm here about. What I want to do today is start to get into the content of what I want to do with these programs. Today we're going to start addressing the question: does God exist? Does there have to be a God? Is there a God? If there is a God, what is He like? What is He about? But the main question of any faith, the driving questions of any spirituality is there some kind of higher power, some kind of spiritual entity, creator, God, that is the overseer of whatever system that we kind of believe in. And so we're going to start with this topic. The next several weeks we're going to be talking about the Bible itself. Is it a credible source of information historically and archaeologically? Also, the place of women in Christianity, what the Bible says about women, along with several other topics that are relevant to today's day and age. Today I want to talk about this question: does God exist? The way I want to start this week, because this will be a 2 or 3 week conversation, is really addressing the question that we are addressing. I find that in this day and age, people are not doing what I call personal discovery. They're accepting a lot of factual information from other sources. They're believing certain things because basically they've been told to believe certain things. And all of us, to some degree, have had our thoughts and our beliefs and our prejudices framed by someone else. It could be a church, it could be a Sunday school class, it could be our family, it could be a mosque, it could be a temple, some spiritual place, or it could be in a school, it could be in a high school, a college. But many of us and most people these days have had their truth and beliefs framed by someone else. Sometimes people put as much faith in a maker of a documentary, experts, advisors, authors, and they put almost as much faith in what these people in these venues have to say as some people put in the Bible. And venues like Christian schools, homeschoolings, they all have great objectives. This faith that I have settled into through my discovery, I'm all for teaching children that faith. But what happens is people are raised up and they have one small view of the world from a very closed view. And the thing about Christian faith in its reality, it's a personal revelation. It doesn't come from indoctrination. It doesn't come from, piling up information, a list of do's, do-nots. It's a faith you don't hand down this faith, although you'll find in families and different nationalities, that's exactly what has happened with Christianity. Also, you find in schools and universities that people are being indoctrinated as young people into certain viewpoints. A lot of it is the absence of God, different kinds of moralities and aspects of looking at this humanity. But I believe that most people, in some way, shape, or form, have had their beliefs formed for them by someone else, whether it's in a faith or a spiritual environment, or whether it's in an educational or a scientific environment. Either way, most people are walking in a blind faith in whatever one of these things that they've settled into. There's a book that, if you are interested in finding out one man's personal discovery, the book is called Case for Christ. It's written by a man named Mark Sobel, who was an investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune in the 70s and 80s. And somewhere in that time frame, his wife had found Christ, had become a Christian, very dedicated, and made her life all about this faith, and made it the one thing that informed everything that she lived for. And he became a very angry, vindictive searcher, because he kind of viewed this faith of Christianity as stealing his wife. And so he made it his life's goal to disprove the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the historical content of the Bible. And so he spent many years going over to that part of the world, doing a lot of studying, talking to doctors, archaeologists, scientists, and just doing all the due diligence of trying to disprove everything that the Bible says about this man, Jesus. And lo and behold, at the end of his journey, he found he couldn't disprove it. And so by the fact that he couldn't find anything to disprove what the Bible says, he surrendered to this faith called Christianity. But at least he did his due diligence. And so if anybody's interested in the book, it's called The Case for Christ. It's also a movie that came out. My journey of faith was similar because of my upbringing. I was raised a Catholic till I was 14. Then my mother became kind of a radical born-again Christian. And so I had these different divergent views of Christianity, but I wasn't really comfortable with either one that I saw. Kind of searched more, I guess, within the realm of Christianity, but looked at what could be truth out there. Did many, many years, maybe 10, 20 years of discovery and investigating and checking out history, the history of Christianity, its place in other faiths. And so my personal journey was a long journey of personal discovery. And that's why I'm in a place where I'm settled in that I believe beyond a shadow of doubt this is the truth, because I have done my own search. And so it's not a bad thing to be skeptical. It's not a bad thing to be a searcher. But each person has to be responsible for their own journey. If God is real, then that's a question that needs to be answered, so that we can have a proper way to filter and answer things we go through in life, what everything means, what it doesn't mean, decisions that we make throughout our lifetime. On the other hand, if God doesn't exist, we have the same situation. We need to have that question answered. Otherwise, we could go through our life under an assumption that quite possibly could be false. And so as we go through this discussion on whether God exists or not, we're going to talk about many different motives that people have this question. It may come from a healthy skepticism of not believing in something that's not seen. It may come from a lifetime of hurt, a lifetime of having a lot of tragedies in your life, where it's just formed that there can't possibly be a God if all this havoc and this pain and misery and sorrow is in this world. There can't be a God, certainly not a loving God, that is up there sovereign over this whole thing. Some people are coming from a viewpoint that they believe in science rather than religion, And so in many ways, science ends up being their religion. Some people just don't want to know there's a God. They don't want any kind of accountability. And so as we look at this question, it's so many layers of why people would ask or not ask if there's a God, that to address every single layer would probably take months. And so I want to deal with it in a broad sense to some degree, but hopefully answering enough questions to each individual that is wrestling or doesn't even care but is curious about whether there would be a God or not, that it might put you on a journey. Because it's a journey that needs to be wrestled to the ground no matter which side of this discussion you come from. And so it's the most important question we can really have in life. Again, like I said, if there is a God, that's a big deal. If there isn't a God, that's also a big deal. We only have one life in this humanity, and we need to move through it with our decisions and our future and our purpose and what we do relationally, what we do in our vocation. All these things come into play, but we need to know what is the big reason for all this. Is it random? Is it meaningless? And we just are born and we live and then we die? Or is there some grand purpose for this whole project? And each one of us has been placed here by some creator for some purpose in this big project called humanity. And so what I want to do after the first break is go through just some more information, kind of create a backdrop of what we can look at to answer these questions, but also to open doors of possibilities of thought. And so when we come back from this first break, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bible and Jesus, the Quran, and Islam, and different spiritualities, and how these different things address the question of God and the question of our purpose in life. So we'll be back in a minute after a few words from our sponsors.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. I've been riding motorcycles my entire adult life. During the course of my 30-year career as a lawyer, I've also represented countless injured motorcyclists. If you're one of them, I can be of assistance to you. Go to my website, please, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I'll always be there for you. I'm on your side when you ride.
Hi, my name is Sharon Gillette, and I'm the owner of One Stitch at a Time. I've been doing this since I'm 9 years old, but it became full-time when my husband was diagnosed with cancer several years ago. And I never went back to work because I wanted to take care of him. I feel what makes me stand out is that I care. I take a personal interest in your project. I take the time to find your correct fit and treat you like a friend, not just a customer. So whether it's embroidery, making patches, printing shirts, doing alterations and repairs, or bringing your ideas to life, you can call me at 631-428-1245 or visit my website at www.onestitchatatime.co.
Welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill. We're in the middle of a discussion on if God exists or not. What I want to talk about this segment is something that has really corrupted this question that comes from actually the people who are within different religions. Because you find that if people really believe there's a God, it would show in how they live their life, the decisions they make, and what they do. There's a very good book written by a pastor and a church planter called Craig Rochelle called The Christian Atheist. And this book is about those who say they believe in God but live as though he doesn't exist. And I want to say that again. It's about people who say they believe in God but live as though he doesn't exist. I find in my life experience, there's a vast majority of people who say they believe in God, they say they believe in the Bible, and they say they believe in Jesus. They might even go to church, and they might go to Sunday school and do the things they do. But when you really look at their life, they're not following the teachings, the truths, the instructions of God, yet they say that they believe he exists. And so when you think about this from looking on the outside, do we really have a life that says we believe there is a God that exists? And this isn't particular to Christianity. You know, when you look at even Islam, and you look at the teachings in the Quran and the Sirah and the Hadith, the three-book trilogy of their faith, and read what it means to follow Allah, and then look at the high percentage of, I guess what you would call moderate Muslims, they're dealing with the same thing. You know, they're saying there's something, they're saying they believe in a God, yet I guess it's not a big deal that God will kind of let everything kind of go and not say anything. Jewish religion, the same thing. You got Reformed Jews, you have different levels of commitment. And I think every spirituality, every philosophy, what percentage of people are actually dedicated to the absolute faith of what they say they believe? And so this kind of corrupts the whole question if you're looking in from the outside and saying, okay, I want to know if there is a God or not, and these are the people who say they believe in God, but their life is not saying that it's that big a deal. And so this corrupts the whole thought process of it. And not to say, you know, as a follower of Christ and a Christian, and we're human, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to act non-Christian at times, but then it's a matter of being a Christian means asking forgiveness, repenting, you know, saying you're sorry, changing. And so is that happening in people's lives, or are they just saying, oh, well, devil made me do it, you know, I'm only human, and they don't think it's a big deal that they've dishonored a God that they are trying to tell everyone they think is real. If there is a God, I think it would make sense that he would say, I've created you. I've decided just what a great life is for you. I've designed you. I've put you in an environment that I've made. And so wouldn't it make sense if you actually believe in that God, that you would kind of try your best to adhere willingly to the things that he says is most beneficial, and that would have him walk with us in life, whether it's with grace and mercy and being with us through things. I think if you truly believed in God, that would be your existence. And so we find out that it's very easy to be skeptical of God's existence, or even to believe, you know, what Karl Marx said. And this is the whole quote that Karl Marx had said, because everybody kind of knows the end of it. So Karl Marx said that religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. And so if we don't believe in God and we have these religions, Marx has pretty much hit the nail on the head. But if there is a God, that changes everything. The interesting thing is, over the centuries of humanity, the dilemma that has occurred is when God is eliminated, it becomes one of the most drastic proofs that he actually exists. It's when you take God out of a culture, out of a nation, out of a civilization, or out of a humanity, and see what humanity always reverts back to. You kind of see that there must be something within this premise of there being a creator, a God that is the glue that holds everything together, the ultimate truth, the ultimate good. There was a man named Friedrich Nietzsche, a devout atheist. He died in 1900, and made the statement that God is dead. And he died as an atheist. Once he sat and he looked at a piano and its keys and said, "That piano has more of a soul than I do." So it kind of shows you the mindset of this man and how much of a staunch atheist he was, that he made no account of any kind of spiritual content, any spirituality, any God or something out there. And the sad thing is, the last 15 years of his life, he struggled with his sanity. He tried to assemble pieces of his childhood with actually bits of scripture of the Bible as markers. Nietzsche once said, "Because God died in the 19th century, two things will happen in the 20th century. The first thing is the 20th century will be the bloodiest century in history. And the second thing is universal madness will break out." Kind of an interesting prophetic man for a man who was an atheist. He really asked the question, if there is no God, is there any up or is there any down? Is there any right? Is there any wrong? If we're honest with ourselves, really the horrifying ramifications of atheism is we're willing to live with all we see going on. It just is what it is. When we have no sense of absolute truth, that truth has become relative, and this is what we get. When God has been pushed out of our culture, our schools, our families, and our government, it just is what it is. And so if you look at humanity as a whole and cultures and just through the generations, the ebb and flow and the height of religion and the low points of religion, you see a pattern that when God is not part of the realization of a civilization and a humanity, it just crumbles and it just goes to the depths of depravity. If there is no God, basically you're born, you live, you die. You have no right to any moral objection to anyone else because they're going through the same existence that you are. Their rights, their opinions are pretty much just as valid as yours, no matter how noble they are or no matter how horrible you might think they are. Someone walks into a school or a mall or a Walmart and viciously murders a crowd of innocent people. Where's God in that? It's a very valid question, a very important question. Amgran Lott, the daughter of Billy Graham, kind of gave an answer to that question. She said, look, we've kicked him out of the door of our schools. We've kicked him out of the courts of law. We've kicked him out of politics. We've kicked him out of every arena of public thinking. And we wonder where he is. Sometimes getting rid of God, saying he doesn't exist, provides us with the best proof that he really does. One of the hard parts about believing in God and thinking that there is some spiritual overseer or being is we have a problem believing in things that we can't see. But when we think about it, there really are several things that we believe even though we can't see them. Gravity, we can't doubt gravity. We can't doubt centrifugal force. We can't doubt the wind. We know it exists because of how it affects things. Actually, Jesus uses this analogy in the Bible, speaking of the effects of God's Spirit in our life. In the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 8, he says, "The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you can't tell where it comes from or where it's going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit." And in the faith that I hold dear, this Christian faith, that whole idea of born of the Spirit, we believe that God has a spiritual transaction that happens when we dive into this faith and surrender to Jesus, and we actually have God's Spirit. And so it moves even though we don't see it. It moves us. It moves our feelings. It moves our actions. It moves the purpose of our life, the future of our life. We can see God move through a lens of spiritual eyes throughout the world. Actually, it's interesting, in even the recording of the show, we just had a little incident where we can see how God kind of was there coordinating things, even though we didn't see it, we didn't hear it. The evidence of it is kind of uncanny. And so the problem is we cannot see some things, but we feel and we see the effects of its existence. And so when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about science. Basically, in this human realm, we have two thoughts of truth. God is truth, or science is truth. And this is something that we'll be wrestling for the rest of the discussion to next week with a lot of scientific information, archaeological information, historical content, where we're kind of wrestle this thing called truth, because this search for God and this search for reality, whether it's there is a God or there is not a God, is really a search for truth. And I firmly believe that there is only one truth, otherwise truth doesn't exist. And so when we come back from a word from our sponsors, we'll shift into that direction, talk a little bit about truth, and talk a little bit about science. So we'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. In addition to representing injured motorcyclists for over 30 years now, during that same time, I've represented countless car crash victims and construction workers injured on construction sites. If you need my assistance, go to my website, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I will always be there for you.
Welcome back to our program. Before the break, I mentioned that basically we have two schools of thought about what is truth. From a religious and faith and spiritual perspective, we have a statement that God is truth, and we also have a humanistic viewpoint of science being truth. And somewhere there are ideas out there that kind of combine the two of those things. But the truth of the matter is science is not actually truth. See, what science is the search for the truth. See, science is an ever-changing organism. If there's anything that could be called evolution or something that's evolving, it's science. It constantly changes because it's seeking for truth. You know, the earth was flat, now it's not flat. They used to believe that you need to use leeches to heal people. They kind of find out that's not the best way to heal people. And so the thing is, what's true in science today may not be true tomorrow. The thing that science and faith have in common is they're both searching actually for what is the truth. And so there are two common seeker avenues of finding what is truth. Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist, a renowned atheist apologist, in 1999 he said, the method of social rationalism can help us think through our moral beliefs to detect inconsistencies. But you cannot use science to say fundamentally what is right or what is wrong. You cannot use science to prove if it's right or wrong to kill or hurt people. That comes from somewhere else. See, even science with their answers, there are questions that they just can't come up with an answer. Science or an atheist philosophy cannot tell you whether it is right or wrong to do something. You end up with moral relativism. What is right for one is wrong for another. Your level of morality cannot be pushed on someone else's thoughts of morality. What gives you the right to think that your moral compass is any better or any worse than anybody else's. Without some guideline from someone outside of the human realm, humanity is left to individual speculation and rationalization. And so what happens is everything is relative. And so we really have no moral right to judge people, to say that person who has reached a level of what we think is immoral depravity. We don't have that right unless there's some kind of moral compass that's been set in stone or in tablets, to throw that in there, as to what is actually the best and worst of this humanity. It has to come outside of humanity. Otherwise, it's one man's opinion or a group of people, a panel, a group of people. And what gives that group of people to have any more rights to decide what is right or wrong than any other group of people? You know, Stephen Hawkins, a devout atheist, spent most of his life trying to disprove the very existence of God. He had a divine faith in humanity and a divine faith in science. He said that religion believes in miracles, but they are inconsistent with science. The problem he always wrestled with is he had no answer for actual miracles that happen. The unexplained, science will just make a decision to leave them unexplained. When they have no logical explanation, they won't even try. One of my favorite quotes in this discussion of whether there's a God or evolution versus creation, there was a Nobel Peace Prize winner named George Wall, biology professor from Harvard. And he has a quote that I believe may be the most profound quote of hypocrisy of science trying to seek the truth. And so this is the quote that George Wall made about creation versus evolution. He says, when it comes to the origins of life, we have only two possibilities that as to how life arose. One is spontaneous generation arising to evolution. The other is a supernatural creative act of God. There is no third possibility. Spontaneous generation was scientifically disproved 100 years ago by Louis Pasteur, Spallanzani, Redding, and others. That leads us scientifically to only one possible conclusion, that life arose as a supernatural act of God. I will not accept that philosophy because I do not want to believe in God. Therefore, I choose to believe in that which I know is scientifically impossible, the spontaneous generation arising to evolution. Maybe one of the most ignorant quotes in humanity. He's a scientist, yet he is going against everything that he believes to accept something he knows impossible because he just doesn't want to deal with the possibility of there being a God. See, science will always attempt to manipulate data to prove what they will accept. They'll accept the impossible rather than the obvious. So science has what is called this Big Bang theory, and several similar theories. But what is almost given in all scientific thought is that all things come from something, except the first something. I want to say it again. All things come from something, except the first something. And they have and they will never be able to explain that scientifically. And so science always has these areas where science stops, it has no answer, and they would rather leave an open question than venture towards a possibility of maybe there is something outside of the seen realm that is making these decisions, that is perpetrating these reactions, these material, immaterial things that happen in the known physical realm that can't be explained by the physical. The Big Bang Theory, the mathematical probability of the Big Bang Theory and all of its subsequent chemical reactions, interactions, scenarios that would have been needed to randomly develop the complexity of the universe, our planet, all life, including humans, is mathematically an impossibility. The probability and the number is so big we don't have a name for that number. We don't even have a name for a fraction of that number. Right? Science is there and can explain the process of what happened, but there has to be a transcendent first cause that gives us a reason for our beginning. I mentioned earlier in the show, God was proven to be by a nuclear physicist, basically by using the Big Bang Theory. So I believe the Big Bang Theory is the explanation for all of creation. The interesting thing is it is a virtual mathematical impossibility to have happened by accident. It just goes against so many scientific truths, theories, entropy. Nothing moves from chaos to organization. You know, you take things as simple as the most simple protein in the human body. It's an astronomical probability for that to be created randomly, just by random molecules and atoms just over time having the right combination to form just a protein, let alone, you know, organisms and the human body and the eye, what the eye can do, what different organs can do, just what blood does, our DNA. It's virtually a mathematical impossibility of the randomness of this creation or this humanity being here without the interaction of something outside of us that is bigger and a creator. And I think with this faith of Christianity, I think many people, they view us as ignorant, as we're not intelligent because we believe in a God that came, lived among us, became flesh, died, rose from the dead, and the subsequent generations of the effects of that. And the thing is, there are very intelligent and smart atheists out there, and there's also many smart and intelligent people who believe in God and are Christian. But then again, there are also a lot of unintelligent people who believe in God, granted, but there's also a lot of unintellectual people who are atheists. Intelligence is not an indication of what truth is. Right? The theory of intelligent design, the theory that life or the universe could have risen by chance, was designed and created by some intelligent entity. I'll discuss that when we get back from this break. I have some, just interesting things I found when I was investigating and doing some research for this conversation from Berkeley, of all colleges. This day and age, and actually 3 ages, has been one of the most progressive, anti-God, more scientific thinking universities in the country. We know from modern protests and that they won't even entertain a conversation of conservatism, moralism, with what's happened in the last couple of years. And so I want to discuss some things as we go into our last segment, just about intelligent design, the intelligence community, and how that all kind of plays into this conversation of is there a God or is there not a God? And so I want to take a few minutes and just recognize our sponsors, the people who have been gracious enough to sponsor and finance this show. And so we'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll go through the last segment of this conversation of is there a God?
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. I've been riding motorcycles my entire adult life. During the course of my 30-year career as a lawyer, I've also represented countless injured motorcyclists. If you are one of them, I can be of assistance to you. Go to my website, please, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I'll always be there for you. I'm on your side when you ride.
Hi, my name is Sharon Gillette, and I'm the owner of One Stitch at a Time. I've been doing this since I'm 9 years old, but it became full-time when my husband was diagnosed with cancer several years ago. And I never went back to work because I wanted to take care of him. I feel what makes me stand out is that I care. I take a personal interest in your project. I take the time to find your correct fit and treat you like a friend, not just a customer. So whether it's embroidery, making patches, printing shirts, doing alterations and repairs, or bringing your ideas to life, you can call me at 631-428-1245 or visit my website at www.onestitchatatime.co.
Welcome back to the program. This is Pastor Ski, and this is Answers from Mars Hill. When we left off, I mentioned about the theory of intelligent design, and the Berkeley Education Department has defined intelligent design as certain features of the universe and of living things as best explained by intelligent cause. And that intelligent cause is assumed to be God. Now, if you just think about that statement, that certain aspects of the universe are best explained by intelligent cause, and this intelligent cause is often assumed to be God, you would have to stretch your imagination and your whole way of thinking to come up with an intelligence that wouldn't in some way, shape, or form be something we would call a God. Energy cannot have intelligence. Energy is going to do what energy always does. Created matter is always going to do what it always does. And so when there are things that cannot be explained by science, then something is thinking beyond the normal realm of the physical realm. And so I like the way they say is often assumed to be God because they are scared to death of actually admitting that there is an ultimate creator. See, the main argument against intelligent cause is you can't prove it, and science will not accept a theory of proof unless it can be proven by the scientific method. The problem is they don't hold everything up to that statement. There are many other things that they will accept without credible proof by what is called the scientific method. Evolution being one of those things. The age of things also. One of the things that would help validate the theory of intelligent design is we'd need to know the intent and the form of that intelligence. And this is where, as a Christian, we have a document that was given us that gives us the intent and the form of that intelligence. And we're going to have a couple of shows. I'm going to talk about can that be trusted to be true, valid, scientifically, historically accurate. Right? Berkeley states in its analysis of intelligent design that these advocates of intelligent design have organized themselves into a community, but are devoted to promoting their idea, not one organized around the activity of science and figuring out how nature would really work. The interesting thing is that's exactly what they do, and the scientific community is really splintered, because there is a scientific community that believes in intelligent design, and then there's a scientific community that doesn't believe in intelligent design. And the thing is, they're all using the same information. It's just they're looking at it through different eyes. See, when when a scientific community refuses to entertain the option of intelligent design, they're taking a myopic view, and they're making a calculated decision to eliminate other options based on their individual prejudices. And so science has really what they call a scientific checklist on how they check things. The first thing is it focuses on the natural world. And that's the problem with science, is they don't give any credibility nor have a realization that there is an unseen world, a spiritual world, that we need to understand and we need to navigate through, as well as the physical realm. Science aims to explain things in the natural world. Of course, that's what they would do. They use testable ideas. Also, science likes to tell us they rely on evidence, even though science doesn't always rely on evidence. They say it involves a scientific community, except if it's a scientific community that doesn't agree with their particular viewpoint of what evidences actually mean. So basically, most of the scientific community is what would be called scientific Pharisees. They only allow their advocates a voice. They only promote the ideas that they want to promote. People that are leaning towards intelligent design actually rely on the same information of those who don't rely on it. Science is so much that they can't explain. The impossible odds of something they know had to have occurred, along with explaining the impossible. So one of the problems is science talks a lot about logic, but at some point randomness becomes so unrandom and becomes a collaboration of organization and purpose that to think of it as being random is totally illogical. One of the ways higher education is taking control of what we think and believe is this new premise of Common Core curriculum. And I'm probably going to end on this point. And next week we're going to go into a lot of evidences, a lot of technical information. But when we were taught back when I was growing up, we had to actually learn processes, how numbers work, the process of thinking through the very data, the process to find the correct answer. Now you just have the answer with no process of discovery, and you have to accept it as a truth. So it's created an intellectual laziness, and that's a strategy of educators and thinkers, because they want you to believe what they program to you for you to believe. And in essence, you've made them God in the area of intelligence and education. People have lost the desire to think, the desire to reason out the deep things of our life, and even the way of scientific discovery. There are too many things, even about our planet and us, that scream of intent and purpose. There's even a symbiotic relationship that we have with our Earth and our universe and our sun, along with a symbiotic relationship we have with other planets that defies the randomness and indicates very powerful intent and very powerful purpose. You know, when you take science and all it's discovered to be the realities of our physical realm, the inconsistencies with what would be random, all of the natural and created order points to an intelligent designer. Whenever you would voice that, that would equate to God. Even our emotional, our spiritual connections to our surroundings, a sunrise, a sunset, sounds and sights that move us. As bikers, even our connection with creation, everything compels the logical thought process to be convinced someone did this. And with our place and our particular posture in this created order, there's compelling, if not circumstantial evidence that intent was towards us. I want to end with two quotes, one by a Christian apologist called Ravi Zacharias, speaking of the frustrations and complications of an atheistic worldview. He said, "The reality of atheism and the unwillingness to live with its ramifications, being overwhelmed by a pluralist worldview and not being able to defend your position. It's the frustration of an atheist view, dealing with the reality that we live in, from an atheist view and trying to sort out any kind of position to defend what's right and wrong, what's moral and immoral, is virtually impossible. And I want to end with a quote from C.S. Lewis as far as does God exist. C.S. Lewis once remarked that God is not the sort of thing that can be that you can be moderately interested in. After all, if God does not exist, there's no reason to be interested in God at all. On the other hand, if God does exist, then this is of paramount interest, and our ultimate concern ought to be how to be properly related to this being upon whom we depend moment by moment for our very existence. So this question that I'm trying to address today and probably the next week, maybe another third week, I don't know, is really one of the most important questions we can have as people, and not accept, if you're out there and you don't believe there's a God, you better make sure you're right. That's all I can say. And for those who believe in God, I hope you've done your due diligence to have a rational argument, a rational conversation, be able to know in your heart that you know there's a God. I've found that to be true through 20, 30 or more years of intense study, investigating, and really soul searching. And so as we wind down, I want to thank our sponsors, Motorcycle Mike, Mike Levine in Hauppauge, New York, One Stitch at a Time, Sharon Gillette. I want to thank you for your sponsorship, and also this week I want to thank Samantha from Samantha's Little Bit of Heaven. It's a Christian coffee house in Northport. If you're out there and you want to have a nice quiet evening with some good entertainment, if you want to hear some things of faith, hear some good Christian music, or just come and hang out and have coffee with some nice people, they're located at 287 Larkfield Road in East Northport. You can call them at 631-262-1212. Get their schedule, information, who's going to be performing there, speaking there. I'm going to be speaking there on the 18th of February, 7 o'clock in the evening. Their website is samanthaslittleBitofheaven.org, and check them out. Sam and me have been good friends for probably 15 years now. Her husband used to be in the motorcycle ministry with me, and it's a nice quiet place if you want a nice quiet evening with family and friends. And so next week we're going to continue this conversation. I want to thank all our sponsors. Again, I want to thank Strong Island Entertainment for putting their trust in this show being a viable entity and something that is important and something that needs to be out there so that the world can kind of understand the truth about God, the truth about Christianity, and we can have a conversation and maybe think about things in reason. God bless you, and have a good week, and I'll see you next week.